Welcome to Brightown Broadcast News for Thursday, January 4th, 2024. Mike Adams here. Thank you for joining me today. Let me tell you what we've got coming up. First of all, I've got a new interview with the founder of Goldback, which is Jeremy Corden. And as you know, I did all this lab testing on Goldbacks and found out that they have better than 100% recovery. That is actually a little bit more gold than they promised to have. And, I checked the gold purity and so on. And so in the interview today with Jeremy, we talk about the divisibility and the usability and some of the stories of how people are using these Goldbacks that a lot of people are really excited about, including all the people I've given them away to. I think I've given away more Goldbacks than any other thing that I've ever owned. It's wild. It puts a smile on my face just to hand these out to people, and they light up. They're like, this is amazing. The other thing I want to mention is that if you missed yesterday's interview with Zach Voorhees, I have received more mind-blowing positive feedback about that interview for whatever reason than any interview that I've done in recent memory. People were just blown away by the conversation that Zach and I had. For example, Zach's observations on the weakening magnetosphere and the idea that through the vaccine genocide agenda, the globalists are actually, they think they're doing humanity a favor by kind of killing us softly. It's kind of a form of soft euthanasia so that we don't die harshly in the coming event, the wipeout event, whatever that may be. And Zach talked about what he thought that event might be. And other really, really interesting issues. So if for whatever reason, if you missed that interview yesterday, just go back to Brightown Broadcast News from yesterday, and I think that interview starts around 1 hour. Or I also post all my interviews separately as standalone interviews, so you just go to Brightown.com or Rumble.com, go to my channel, and you can, or search for Zach Voorhees, Vorhies, and you'll be able to pull up that interview. That's definitely one you do not want to miss. Also want to say that Brightown University right now continues to run a personal energy prepping. I forgot what episode we're on right now, but I guess it's like episode 5 or something probably today because it started last Saturday. So that's with Francesco Garipoli. People are loving this program. Every episode is free to watch. You just register with your email address at brightu.com. That's the word bright and the letter U, like Brightown University, but shorter, brightu.com. Go register there. And then one more thing, coming up January 20th at brightu.com, I have a very powerful special for you that's just going to blow your mind. And it is a special docuseries on healing from the bioweapons featuring Dr. Brian Ardis, Dr. Edward Group, Dr. Henry Ely, and Dr. Jana Schmidt. Yeah, those 4 doctors, and I got them all together on an interview. And that interview, I think I'm going to run that tomorrow, if not very, very soon. Had a great time talking to those 4 remarkable individuals. And that program runs January 20th at brightu.com. So you can go to brightu.com right now and just register now. And you'll be registered then for the January 20th episode or series featuring those 4 doctors. You do not want to miss that. A couple other note-keeping items. Just like I mentioned yesterday, there is a slight hum behind me now because of my data science workstation that I have in my office where I do this recording. And it might get worse today. I apologize. Hopefully you can't hear it very much. It might get worse because now I have remote devs. I've given them access to this machine, and every once in a while they'll run like a little fine-tuning process, a little like checking out some training, algorithm, and the fans will just go off, and just screaming fans. I'm like, oh, someone's training something over there on the AI system, and then after a couple of minutes, the fans will die down. I'm like, oh, done. Because the data science server is so powerful that it doesn't take very long to do anything. This is like, wow, it did that in 60 seconds? That's crazy. So anyway, if you hear that, that's what that's all about. I apologize in advance. It won't be here forever. It's just until I get it all figured out, and then I'll push it out to one of our data centers. Okay, coming up, by the way, I want to mention we've got some amazing interviews also coming up. Do you remember the interview with Dr. Michael Nels that I did a couple of weeks ago? He is the German doctor. He's the author of the book. I forgot the exact title, but it's about how to protect yourself from the psyop of disinformation pushed by the globalists. And one of the things that he said in that interview was that the hippocampus region of your brain, for your entire life, it continues to engage in neurogenesis, which means it's building new nerve cells. And we've probably all heard the myth that your brain only has a limited number of cells, and that's all you get. That's it. For the rest of your life, you can't get any more brain cells, which implies that you can't get any smarter. And that's nonsense. You can get a lot smarter. And Dr. Michael Nels explained that to me in that interview. If you want to see that interview, by the way, his last name is spelled Nehls. Nehls. I'm not trying to make fun of his name. I'm just trying to sort of pronounce all the letters. It's Nehls. So he said that when you have the right conditions and you're exposed to the right stimuli, your hippocampus is actually generating new nerve cells through your entire life, no matter what age you are. And you can therefore become smarter. You can expand your neural network for your entire life. I was like, whoa, that explains something that I've experienced that I'm going to share with you here, which is a really big, I think a hugely valuable secret that I've stumbled upon through a severe injury that has led me to what I'm about to share with you. And I'm just kind of hiding it in this podcast because I don't want to try to make a big deal out of this separately. But believe me, what I'm about to share with you, it's priceless. It is priceless. And it was Dr. Nels who kind of turned me on to this line of thinking. We'll get to that in just a second. But I'm scheduled to interview Dr. Nels again coming up. I'm going to talk to him more about neurogenesis. I also want to mention I'm going to be interviewing Timothy Alberino coming up. I'm bringing back Colonel Anthony Schaefer for an interview. We're bringing back Dane Wigington from Geoengineering Watch. We're going to have him on soon. And then also David Webb from The Great Taking, whose documentary and book, PDF downloadable, has been making a lot of waves. Everybody's talking about The Great Taking because he just nails it. And I can't wait for that interview, but that's coming up. I can't give you the exact date yet, but we'll have all those interviews for you very, very soon. Oh, and then also John Williams, who's got very popular videos on Brighteon.com, videos about finance and about credit and about the banking system. And John Williams has really great energy. I'd love to watch his videos myself. If you haven't seen them, just go to Brighteon.com and just look around, or just search for John Williams, I guess, and you'll find his videos. All right, now, before we get into today's main topic, which I actually regret that we have to talk about. I don't want to talk about today's topic because it's the Middle East. I really don't want to talk about it, but some major events have taken place that are going to have huge repercussions for all of us. And I want to give you my best kind of top-down analysis of what just happened with the bombing in Iran and the 2 strikes against Hezbollah and Hamas leaders in Lebanon, inside Hezbollah territory, in essence. I want to give you my best take on what this means for all of us. That's the main topic here. But first, let me share this big secret with you. I call it a secret. I mean, I don't know what you want to call it, but no one ever told me what I'm about to tell you. I had to stumble upon this myself. So here it is. Remember that Dr. Nels said the hippocampus engages in neurogenesis. Neurogenesis, right, means growing or building new nerve cells. There's also something in your brain called neuroplasticity, which means that the existing nerve cells that you have are able to adapt their behavior or to make new connections among the existing nerves. So making new connections is like updating the software on the same hardware. Whereas neurogenesis in the hippocampus is like getting new hardware. You've got more nerve cells. And then you can code them, you can program them with stimuli that we're going to talk about here. So, number one, we know that your brain can actually build nerve cells through your entire life, no matter what your age. Okay, second point, why do most people not build new brain cells? Because if you look around, you probably don't see a lot of examples of people you know getting smarter and smarter and smarter. That's have you noticed that that's typically not happening? I believe, now this is just my own theory as a food scientist, but I believe that the food supply is intentionally laced with neuroinflammatory excitotoxins that are designed to damage neurology and dumb people down and inhibit neurogenesis. So this is really critical to understand. Neurogenesis is a natural process, but if your brain is flooded with excitotoxins, like MSG, aspartame, yeast extract, torula yeast, soy sauce, all this garbage that's thrown into the food supply on purpose, taste enhancers that are everywhere across the grocery store. I mean, it's horrific. Just look for yeast extract. It's in so many things. The presence of these neurotoxins inhibits your neurogenesis. Okay. Now, as it happens, I am genetically, I've been this way my whole life. For whatever reason, I can't process glutamate. I can't break down that amino acid the way that a lot of people can. And this is clearly genetic, and personally I think it's traced back to my Native American ancestry, because I've noticed this is very common among a lot of Native Americans, that they have MSG sensitivity. Now, this used to be called, I think it was like, Chinese food syndrome or something, because Chinese food restaurants typically would add a ton of MSG into their food. Because in Japan, it's called I think it's the umami taste, or umame, maybe that's how they pronounce it. And the umame taste, it's kind of savory and kind of sweet. And so it's used throughout both Japanese food, but especially Chinese food. It's not typically used in Mexican food, but it is used in Chinese food. Now, since I lived in Taiwan, I came to understand that it was a minefield trying to eat anything in Taiwan when I was very sensitive to MSG. And it's also difficult to avoid in the United States if you just shop at any grocery store. And so over the years, I became very astute at avoiding MSG and finding out all the ingredients that contain some amount of MSG. And one of them is like chicken stock. Any kind of chicken stock in a box, in a cube, whatever, any kind of gravy mix, any kind of mixes like that even a lot of salad dressing mixes, almost all of them are loaded with MSG because it makes it taste better. So I learned to avoid those things. And so I became a person who has almost zero circulating glutamate in my blood. And glutamate, or MSG, being an excitotoxin, which Dr. Russell Blaylock, I think, is the one who first really advocated that term. At least that's my memory of it. These excitotoxins overexcite the nerve cells in your brain, and they damage your brain, and they are inflammatory to the brain. And so, think about this. The typical person is consuming large amounts of excitotoxins, which means they're frying their brain cells at every single meal, typically, and, eating snack chips and whatever else contains all this garbage. But it doesn't give them headaches or, high blood pressure or facial flushing or any of the other symptoms of MSG, toxicity. So they don't think there's any problem with it. So they eat this stuff. It's affecting their brains, and it's, again, inhibiting their neurogenesis. Okay. But because I'm, in effect, highly sensitive to it, I kept that out of my life. All right, that's the next thing. Then, earlier in 2023, I almost cut off my index finger. As you know, I talked about it here. And looking at it now, I can't believe how much the recovery has succeeded. It's been a long road, but my goodness, I mean, you look at it right now, you wouldn't even suspect it was ever injured. But you may recall that I severed some nerves in my finger. I severed the lateral ligaments. I severed lots of blood vessels and, of course, pretty much all the skin. And I'm lucky that the bone didn't detach, frankly. And I ended up using an herb, a mushroom called lion's mane, which I had done some research, and I did know about lion's mane. I knew that lion's mane was neuroprotective, but I did some additional research and found that lion's mane is believed to regrow nerve cells, which I guess in conventional medicine, a lot of like mainstream doctors who are probably pushing vaccines and masks, they would say, no, it's impossible to regrow nerve cells. But that's crazy. There are all kinds of animals that regrow limbs, by the way. I mean, some of them are reptiles. I would guess a lot of them are reptiles. There are animals that regrow tails and legs, you know? By the way, your own body grew from nothing but 2 cells, you know? So, of course, you have neurogenesis. Of course, you can grow limbs. You already did it once before in your mother's womb. You grew your arms and legs, you know? You grew your face. you grew your brain. You grew your teeth. You did all that already. So don't tell me you can't do it. You already did it. Well, lion's mane, I found out, actually did, in my case, it worked for me. It regrew my nerves. And I ended up with this, really, really sensitive fingertip that has, I don't know, maybe double the sensitivity of my other fingers. So I ended up with nerves that were like more functional, more sensitive than before. And I thought, this is wild. And I shared it with the audience here that lion's mane did this. And then I started growing lion's mane, by the way. So now I grow lion's mane, these big hulking, like cauliflower looking mushrooms. And I just take a chunk and throw it in the blender every morning when I'm making my smoothie. So I'm drinking lion's mane. So I started really drinking lion's mane after I almost cut off my finger. All right. So that's the background for what I'm about to tell you. In the months since then, I've come to discover and experience and believe that lion's mane mushroom, I think, has also quite literally made me, what's the right way to say it? Because I don't want to sound like, I'm not, look, for whatever reason, I'm now learning at a rate that is faster than anything I've ever experienced in my life. My brain's ability to embrace and absorb new information it's like it's on steroids, but I'm not taking steroids. Not that steroids would even help. I believe that these factors that I've just mentioned, number one, I'm taking lion's mane mushroom every day. And I know some of you are going to ask, well, how much? How much? I don't know. I just take a little chunk. It's like the size of, what would be a good description? It's like the size of my thumb. How about that? It's about the size of my thumb. I take a chunk, I put it in the blender. And that's raw lion's mane, that I'm growing. Or sometimes I dry it and then I use, dried pieces. But so I'm eating lion's mane every day. It contains whatever, nutrients are synthesized by the mushroom that have this effect. Second, I'm avoiding the neurotoxins because I've had to do that because of my extreme sensitivity to MSG. So I'm avoiding MSG, aspartame, yeast extract, toxic fragrance products that I despise. All these neurotoxins in the food supply, I have avoided these for decades. So that's not part of my diet. And then, thirdly, guess what I drink every day? I drink neuroprotective, anti-inflammatory superfoods. The things I put into my smoothie. One of them being really, really orange, for example, and other things. I put flax seeds in there, right? Sometimes I put, microalgae and different kinds of things. I'm putting all these nutrients into the smoothie, and I'm blending up avocados, and bananas. Although I've been cutting back on the bananas and replacing it with oats recently. Yeah, I'm only doing like half a banana and a cup of oats, which I find works really, really well. It's awesome. It just gives you a little bit more oat fiber. Anyway, so I'm doing these 3 things, and the 4th one is heavy exposure to new stimuli. So I'm doing a ton of listening to audiobooks, a ton of reading, a ton of listening to or watching videos. I'm doing a ton of scanning of news and information, and also how-to material, taking courses, stuff involving, AI and machine learning and stuff like that. And I now believe, this is what I'm sharing with you, I now believe that because I'm doing these 4 things, I am experiencing like a hyper-learning capability that is so self-evident that I know, looking back at when I was in my 20s, and, even then, I was at the top of my class, academically and college entrance exams and all that stuff, Even then, compared to now, is like nothing. Like being able to learn now, because of the things I just mentioned, I feel like my brain it's like a sponge, and it's just absorbing and rearranging, and it is understanding, it's grokking things at a pace that I have never in my life experienced. And in fact, I think this is what's allowing me to even work on this AI project, because of the amount of knowledge and understanding that I had to pull together in order to even understand this was quite a bit. And even now, I'm about to do training on the gas chromatography instrument in our laboratory, for the dioxin testing. It got delayed because of the lack of availability of standards, dioxin standards. There's apparently there was a really long wait on those. But anyway, I'm going to do the training soon, and I can tell you, I'm going to be able to learn the GC triple quad machine in like no time. I can. It's almost like I feel like I could do the whole thing in about 3 hours, and understand almost everything that's going on and how to use the instrument. And just, it's going to be 3 days of training, but I'm going to be bored out of my mind because it's going to be too slow. But I feel like I could just grasp it very quickly and be able to just rock that sucker, no problem. But when I started to think about what's an explanation for this, like why is my brain working better now than ever before in my life? And do you recall? And again, I don't want to sound like I'm trying to, pat myself on the back or anything. I'm trying to share this with you so that you could share this experience. This is really amazing. But do you recall that I started doing speed cubing last year before I injured my finger? And then, even after my finger injury, I picked up the speed cubing again without using my index finger for a while. It was like speed cubing with the middle finger. I had the most dexterous middle finger. It really helped me flipping off politicians and such, But that's when I started taking the lion's mane, and then my speed cubing improved dramatically, to the point where it is today, and I'm able to learn the algorithms and memorize them, and just like learning the algorithms seems like nothing now. The algorithms that were just stumping me, less than a year ago, right now, I'm like, gosh, it's just so obvious. So something's happened, something's changed in my brain, and I'm pretty sure it's these 4 things that I want to share with you here. So again, just to summarize. Now, I'm not your medical doctor. I can't guarantee you're going to get the same results that I think I'm experiencing because of this. And, do your own research and get your own health advice and so on and so forth. But here it is. Lion's mane mushroom, which I don't even think we sell that, by the way. I just grow it, and I encourage you to grow it. I'm not trying to pitch a product here, okay? I don't think we sell that. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's a minor ingredient in something, but I don't think we sell it at all. So lion's mane mushroom, neuroprotective anti-inflammatory superfoods, which are always a good idea, by the way. Protect your brain, protect your heart, protect your cardiovascular system. The avoidance of neurotoxins, MSG in particular, but aspartame, yeast extract, fragrance toxins, etc. And then number 4, exposure to large amounts of new stimuli, which means going into hyper learning. like speed listening to audiobooks, scanning material. Like, did you know? Oh man, this is crazy. Did you know? You probably did know this because you're pretty smart. But did you know that learning doesn't happen at the time of exposure? Learning happens when you go to sleep. And it's during sleep that your brain reorganizes and restructures all of the stimuli that you experience during the day. And that's when learning takes place, because learning is actually structuring information and knowledge in a way that can be retrieved. That's what learning is. Learning is kind of organizing for retrieval. That happens when you sleep. But there are so many different ways to expose yourself to information that you may not have even thought of. For example, oh, you're going to think I'm crazy on this one. Let me just say it. If I want to learn, like, let's say right now I'm learning how to program in Python. It's a really simple language, but I never programmed in Python before, so I just need to learn the basics of Python. So here's what I do. I get a book on Python. And the first thing I do is I focus visually, and I flip through all the pages at the pace of about 1 page per second. It's like 1,000, flip, 1,000, flip, 1,000, boom, 1,000. So, I'll go through, let's say, a 300-page book in 300 seconds. Got it? All right, now, I didn't consciously pick up much of anything, but I saw everything, which means my brain saw everything, and my neurology saw everything. Yeah, right. Now then, it's kind of like you're training your own cognitive large language model in your own neurology. Like, your neural network just got exposed to all that stuff, whether you processed it consciously or not. Then I have a good sleep that night. I make sure I sleep 8 hours. 8 hours of sleep. That's why sometimes I'll do this on a Friday evening. I can sleep late Saturday, just boom, get a full 8 hours. That's the learning time, okay? So I wake up Saturday. Now, it doesn't mean I'm an instant Python programmer on Saturday, but if I were to then start going through the book and following the lessons and doing the exercises, whatever, it would make instant sense. Why? Because my brain was exposed to it, and my brain already organized around it during the sleep. Now so this is like a speed learning tip. Some of you probably already do this. Here's the turbo speed learning tip that you're going to think is bonkers. You are. You're going to think this is nuts. Maybe I shouldn't give away all these secrets. I don't know, but what the heck? Here's what you do. All right, you ready? So Saturday then, you take the same book. Seriously. You turn it upside down. And you flip through it again upside down. Same pace, okay? Now, what you're doing is you're exposing your neurology to the same book now from a different angle, literally. And now your brain has to rethink about this information from a different angle. You flip through it, 1 second per page. Again, 300 seconds for 300 pages. Boom, get a good night's sleep. Okay? And during all this, by the way, it helps to have good nutrition. Don't be drinking a bunch of MSG or eating, food additives or whatever. Probably a good idea to have some lion's mane going. Some good things, good brain boosting, like good brain healthy fatty acids, healthy fats, all kinds of things like that. Get a good night's sleep Saturday night. Sunday morning, wake up, start going through the book consciously, and it all makes sense. It all just forms together. I would do this with any subject. If I were learning calculus, I would do it the exact same way. I flip through the calculus equations and exercises on day 1. Day 2, flip through them upside down, which in terms of calculus sometimes looks almost exactly the same. And then day 3, start going through the exercises consciously. By the time you get to the conscious step, your subconscious has already organized a lot of the information. So one of the things I do in all of this that you'll also think is bonkers is I will turn on, I'll wear a headset and I'll turn on videos from artificial intelligence experts, developers, who are talking about building AI systems and large language models. So I have that in my ears. As that video is playing, usually I'll turn on like a 1 hour seminar or a presentation or something, maybe a couple hours. I'll turn that on, and then I will allow my brain to no longer focus on that, and I'll think through my own business challenges of the day or my own issues. Maybe I'm trying to think about what's going to go into this podcast. Maybe I'm trying to think about what's going to happen with the banking system. I will allow my brain to dream about other topics completely separate from what I'm listening to in my ears. And what happens is that my subconscious takes in the background information that's coming into my ears. And I may emerge from that without having consciously heard anything that was said. But my subconscious now has created a map of the words, the terms, the concepts, which means that when I come back to that subject, I already have basic literacy in it. Yes. True. And you might be thinking, that's impossible. How could that possibly work? Well, let me share something with you. You know the best way to learn how to speak Chinese? And Chinese is a very difficult language, and I don't claim to speak it fluently, but I do speak it pretty darn well, and I have very good pronunciation for an American. In fact, I'm told that all the time by Chinese people. They're like, man, your pronunciation is like really good for a foreigner. You know, I'm the foreigner because I'm over there. How did I do that? Step one is to simply hear hours and hours and hours of Chinese, to hear it. Now, whatever language you want to learn, Espanol or whatever, Russian. I wish I could speak Russian. Wouldn't that be awesome? Or maybe you want to speak Farsi, huh? It might be handy right now. Maybe you want to speak Arabic. First thing you got to do is hear it for several hundred hours. You're not even trying to comprehend it. All you're doing when you are hearing it, I don't mean listening. I don't mean listening. I don't even mean understanding at all. You're just hearing it. What's happening is your brain is beginning to parse it. Your brain is beginning to understand where words end and where the next word begins. You're doing a process that in AI we call tokenization. You are tokenizing the new foreign language that you're trying to learn. Because the hardest part about learning to speak Chinese is not the speaking, it's the listening, it's the hearing, it's the comprehending of the words as they are being spoken. Because they're so completely different from English, the intonation is different, everything is different. And so at first your brain can't even hear it. Just like they said, you know, when the Native Americans first saw the arriving ships from Spain, they didn't know they were ships because they had never seen ships on the horizon of the oceans. It didn't compute. Their neurology wasn't prepared to see ships. It's like when you hear Chinese, if you've never spoken Chinese, your brain has no idea what to do with that. It's just like this crazy mess of nonsense. Well, if you hear Chinese for a few hundred hours, your brain will start to organize it. And then if you start to study Chinese deliberately, you will have some basic functional literacy in the tokenization of the language. Then you'll be able to learn it far more rapidly. Look, so the big takeaway in this, folks, is that, you know, frankly, I should do a whole course on this. I just don't have time. What you need to engage in is what I call pre-learning. You need to pre-learn everything before you learn it. By pre-learning, what I mean is simply exposure to your neural network, which is your brain. Expose yourself to, that came out wrong. We're going to talk about Bill Clinton. No. Expose yourself to the stimulus of the thing that you want to learn. I know the Jeffrey Epstein list just came out. Bill Clinton's all over it, you know. that was a little Freudian slip right there. Don't do that. I mean, expose your mind to the subject matter that you are trying to learn. And the best part is that exposure can be unconscious. You don't even have to think about it. You can just have it flash by your eyes, like flipping through the book. You can just listen to it or just hear it in your ears without even paying attention to it. I mean, even if you want to learn how to write music, first you need to hear hundreds of hours or thousands of hours of the kind of music that you want to write. Even if you don't pay attention, you need to hear it. Your brain needs to organize it. No matter what subject matter you want to learn, you need to be exposed to it. Now, what's fascinating to me about this is that fine-tuning these AI language models is a very similar process, actually, to human learning. It's very similar. What I am doing is taking a language model. This is my large language model project, and I'm exposing it to new information about nutrition and herbs and healing and alternative medicine and so on. And what's happening is it's going to reorganize its own internal parameters, which define vector relationships between tokens or words and phrases and ideas. And ultimately, that if you do that with enough parameters, it creates the appearance of intelligence. I mean, whether it's legitimate intelligence or not, that's currently being debated, but at least it can simulate intelligence, if nothing else. And how do you teach a baby language? How do you teach a baby language? You talk around the baby. You talk around it. You don't demand that the baby know what you're saying from day one. It's like, let's take this 2-month-old, and just talk to it and slap it around until it understands. No, that's not going to work. You can't force a baby to learn through coercion. You just talk around it for years, You talk around it. And that's why the babies that grow up in households that are multilingual, this household speaking Espanol and maybe Chinese and English and maybe French and everything else. Well, the baby can learn all those languages almost effortlessly because the brain has already organized all those sounds and meanings and words. The brain is a neural network system, and it does that automatically. So if you want to learn something, you're never too old to learn. All you need is these 4 things, I believe. You need neurogenesis, which potentially can be helped by lion's mane. You need to avoid neuroinflammatory substances, like neurotoxins, MSG. You need to use neuroprotective, perhaps nutrients or superfoods. And then you need mass exposure to new stimuli through all these methods that I'm talking about. And of course, the more different sensory exposure experiences that you can set up, the better. So if you can learn something audibly and visibly, and this is why I talked about learning Braille before, and thank you for your suggestions on Braille. I have a very keen interest in learning to read Braille. But if you could learn through your sense of touch and audio and visual, then you would have synesthesia, or what would be the term? Neurosynesthesia generation. What would be, I guess maybe that's redundant, but there's got to be a term for this, which is the synthesis or the combination of multisensory inputs into neurogenesis, so that you're building now a multi-dimensional understanding of these new concepts through different sensory inputs of your entire sensory existence, your eyes, your ears, your fingers. I don't know, maybe a sense of smell. I don't know. Can you smell calculus? Some of you might have a joke about that. I don't know if you can. But some of the most brilliant minds throughout history engaged in synesthesia. I don't know if you've ever experienced that. I will share this with you, but since I was a child, I always saw integers as different colors. Did any of you share that experience? Did you ever see numbers as different colors? For example, to me, 8 was always brown. Was 8 ever a color to you? Number 1 was always white for me, for whatever reason. 8 was brown. That's synesthesia. And I experienced that as a child. I mean, 9 was always orange, and 7 was pink, and 6 was yellow, and 5 was blue, and so on. But I always saw numbers as colors. But some people experience reality. They associate numbers with feelings, or numbers with words, or numbers with visual images, or any other format with something else. For example, one of the individuals who memorized pi to something like 10,000 digits, whenever he was asked to restate pi, and 3.14159, whatever, he keeps going, he said that restating the numbers in pi was like taking a walk on a journey and just noting the things that were on the side of the path in the journey. It's like, oh, here's a 653544972, whatever. Like that, in his mind, it was just like taking a walk, and all those things were just very present. And that is a great example of synesthesia. And people who naturally engage in that are super fast learners typically. But what I'm saying is you can induce this. You can induce this. Even if you never saw numbers as colors, you can take any material that you want to learn, and you can look at it visually, and you can listen to it audibly, and then maybe you can bring in another sense. And some people use music. Some people like make up music lyrics to sing concepts that they want to learn, and so on and so forth. Different senses. Or maybe you can use touch, But the more ways you can expose yourself to this information, the more rapidly you can learn it. So I went on far longer than I wanted to about that, but I think that's the most important thing I can share with you today. Like, within your skull is a powerful neural network, biological supercomputer. And yet, no one ever tells us in school how to use it correctly. They just give you a book. Here, read this. Here, memorize this. They never tell you how to memorize it, do they? They never tell you how your own learning software actually works. You have to discover that yourself, or hear it from someone like me or others. And yet, it seems to me like this is the most important thing that children should be taught in school, is like day one. Okay, we're here to learn. How do we learn? Let's start there. Why don't we spend, at least a month figuring out how to learn? And then for the rest of our education, we'll apply those lessons of how we learn. But no, that's not the way the education system works at all. When they say, memorize this, they don't tell you how. How are you supposed to memorize it? They just say it like it's magic, like, memorize this. And if you're a student, if you're a kid, you're like, well, how do I do that? Their answer, the teacher's answer is, well, just memorize it. But how? Well, just go over it. Just read it and then memorize it. But, that's not an answer. You didn't tell me how. They just assume. All right, but the bottom line here, and then I'm going to move on to other topics. The bottom line is we've all been lied to by society with all these assumptions that are just thrown about by doctors and scientists and authorities and so on. And the lies are that your brain deteriorates as you age, that you can't learn new things if you're an old dog. You've heard the saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. That the older you get, the more your brain just runs down. And why even bother trying to learn anything as you get older? It doesn't work. It's all a lie. There's no limit to what your brain can absorb and be exposed to and embrace. There's no age limit, and there's also no hard storage limit. Your brain doesn't store information like a hard drive. I mean, doctors and scientists, they've tried to find, where's the storage sector inside the skull? They've opened up people's skulls, crack, and and they poke around in there, sometimes with electrodes while people are still alive. They're like, what happens when I touch this? And the guy's like, it smells like diesel fuel, whatever. And they poke around. And they still can't find where anything's stored. You know why? Because it's not physically stored in the brain. That's why. The brain is a hyperdimensional holographic organizational retention and retrieval system. Okay? And there is no limit to how much you can know and understand and archive and retrieve. There's no limit in the brain, because the process of organizing, archiving, and retrieving information is not limited to anything in the physical domain. And since you're building new brain cells all the time, i.e. neurogenesis, well, then there's clearly no limit because you're always getting new brain cells. You're getting new hardware all the time, new upgrades. What are you going to do with that hardware? What are you going to expose your mind to next? What do you want to learn? What do you want to understand? How big of a big picture thinker do you want to be? There's no limit. So don't let anybody ever be a cognitive doom and gloomer and say, your brain just wears down as you age. There's nothing you can do about it. You should just watch daytime TV. Well, if you watch daytime TV, well, of course you're going to lose brain function. I mean, come on. That's the punishment for watching daytime television. But if you use your brain for something else, if you learn new information, if you're exposed to new information, if you embrace and invite new experiences and new languages and new ideas, then you never grow old cognitively. You'll never turn into Joe Biden. And the best part is you don't need any psychedelics to do everything I've talked about here. Do you know that I've never taken a psychedelic substance in my entire life? Not in my entire life. I don't take medications. I don't take antidepressants. I don't use recreational drugs and never have. The closest I get to that is, caffeine from freeze-dried coffee and theobromine from cacao, and now apparently lion's mane, which I think is the best discovery of all. But I don't do psychedelic drugs. No way, no thanks. Don't need them. I used to have a friend in college, and his first name was Steve. I'm not going to give his last name, but he said. And he smoked pot, and several of my friends in college would just sit around and smoke pot, and I would never engage in that. And they didn't mind it; they didn't care. They're like, "You want to smoke a joint?" I'm like, "No, I hate that stuff. I hate the smell of it. Exhale out the window." And this guy Steve, he said to me one day, this was in college when I was like 21 or whatever, however old I was, he said, Mike, you have all the advantages of using drugs without having to use them. And I never forgot that quote because it was so funny. Because he felt like he had to use substances in order to get to the mental state that I think I'm describing to you right here. And he told me that in our early 20s. Very wise statement from a very young dopehead, actually. All right, with that said, I'm going to compress the whole thing to talk about the Middle East. Let me see if I can compress this to like 60 seconds. Okay, how about that? Let's do a challenge. Can I compress it to 60 seconds? Probably not, but here it is. Israel is trying to provoke retaliation by Iran. Israel set off that bomb in Iran recently that killed over 100 people at the Soleimani, I don't know, not funeral, but kind of honoring ceremony. Israel has killed multiple commanders now in Lebanon, in Hezbollah territory. Hezbollah is not happy about that. They're going to fight back at some point. Israel wants this because they want to play the victim in order to be attacked by Iran or Hezbollah so that they can drag the United States into the war. And in the United States, there are two elements. One element wants war with Iran. That's the John Bolton, John McCain, the late John McCain, and the Lindsey Graham element. They want war with Iran no matter what. The other element wants nothing to do with war because it's very unpopular and it's an election year. And it's also like the pro-Muslim Democrats that are trying to push Biden and the Democrats to back off from the war. So there's that tension inside the United States. But Israel wants to drag the U.S. into World War III with Iran. And it will probably happen with the next provocation where Iran will retaliate by sinking a U.S. naval vessel, and then the U.S. can claim to be the victim, and the U.S. can start World War III by bombing Iran. Lindsey Graham will celebrate, and Netanyahu will say, got him again. Exploited those Americans to do our dirty work for us. All right, there you go. That's the podcast. That's kind of the summary of the whole thing right there. And the U.S. will follow along because the U.S. is the lapdog of Israel. at least as currently structured. And yes, the Jeffrey Epstein list came out, and yes, Bill Clinton is mentioned all over it. We already knew that. We already knew Bill Clinton's a pedophile. Come on. A bunch of other people are named in the Jeffrey Epstein list, and then there was this honeypot operation, this Boston, Virginia sex ring honeypot op. It was run by, I think, like a South Korean woman, and it was designed to ensnare U.S. high-level officials and government people and, State Department people. It's like Epstein 2.0. And this whole sex ring was busted, but they got the goods on all these high-level people. I wonder how many senators are there, how many hedge fund managers, I wonder how many members of Congress, how many State Department people, all busted in the sex ring. They probably got video on all of them doing ungodly things, maybe to children, who knows? But that's what that whole thing was. I guess the Jeffrey Epstein, sex ring honeypot operation is so incredibly successful from an intelligence point of view, because I guess once they have a sex tape on all these people, they'll follow orders and do whatever they're told. Like send more money to Israel or send more money to Ukraine or whatever, or, lie to the public. It's so successful that this model is continuing, just under new management. Yeah, imagine that. Jeffrey Epstein lives on, even though he didn't kill himself. Don't you find it ironic, by the way, that so many U.S. senators have to pay for sex when they're actually screwing all of America every single day? And we're paying them because we're paying their salaries. Something's wrong with this picture. Then again, it must be a feeling of great power to be a prostitute in Washington, D.C., because if you think about it, the high-dollar hookers in D.C., they're the only people in the world who get to screw with the globalists without getting killed. Interesting how that works, isn't it? All right, I tell you what, we're going to change the subject here. I'm going to introduce the interview today with Jeremy Corden from Goldback. And remember, the website where you can see my lab testing results, it's also our affiliate page for Goldbacks. It's called verifiedgoldbacks.com. And, given what's about to happen, by the way, we are really headed towards a World War III escalation situation in the Middle East. It's so abundantly obvious at this point. It's not difficult to see what's going to happen with energy prices and global supply chains and, probably a lot more money printing, which means devaluation of the dollar. And so I think, look, actually, here's one of my predictions. Iran is going to sink a U.S. naval vessel before very long, as this escalation continues. And the U.S. Navy kind of wants that. Why do you think they just moved the USS Ford out of the Mediterranean? Because they don't want the Ford to be sunk, That's too expensive. That's the biggest, baddest aircraft carrier in the world. They don't want that one to die, but a bunch of other ships, no problem, and then it'll give them the excuse to go full assault, full nuke maybe against Iran. But when this happens, what do you think is going to happen to the price of gold, huh? How many people all over the world are going to panic, get out of the US dollar and get into gold or silver or other forms of safer assets? And I think there's going to be a mad rush when that day comes, and I don't think that day is too far away. So if you want to learn about highly divisible, usable gold, then stay tuned for this interview here with the founder of the Goldback Company. And by the way, one more thing, our store has our New Year's sale continuing through tomorrow night, healthrangerstore.com/2024. That would get you to all the specials we have, all the discounts, all the bundles and everything. And thank you for your support. I am very appreciative of your support. We couldn't do this without you. We couldn't pursue our language model project, our open source, gift to humanity. We couldn't do the publishing. We couldn't do this podcast. We couldn't fund the platform. We couldn't do Brighteon University, Brighteon.social, any of it. We couldn't do it without your support. So thank you so much for your support, and wait till you see what we have coming in 2024. We've got some major announcements coming out, some really innovative tech types of solutions and things that will empower you. And we believe in humanity, and we believe that we can change the world through decentralized technology. So thank you for your support. Again, healthrangerstore.com/2024. Register for the Brighteon University courses at brightu.com and enjoy this interview with Jeremy Corden. And in your spare time, coming up this weekend, be sure to flip through all your books that you want to, memorize or at least expose your brain to. Flip through them and then get a good night's rest. You'll be amazed how quickly your brain begins to structure all that information. It really, really works. Amazing. All right, take care. Welcome to today's interview on Brighteon.com. I'm Mike Adams, and as you know, I am a strong advocate of owning precious metals as a store of value as the dollar continues to collapse. And we know that in 2024, BRICS plus nations are going to embrace non-dollar transactions all over the world. In fact, 2024 will likely be the year that we see the real beginning of the end of the dollar as the global reserve currency. Doesn't mean there won't be dollars in the United States. It's just that they will be worth a whole lot less. So people are turning to things like gold and silver, and also these, which are called goldbacks. And these goldbacks, I got turned on to these by a friend of mine, Robert Scott Bell, and then I did lab testing on these and found out they actually do contain gold. This one contains 51 thousandths of an ounce of physical gold, 24 karat plus actual gold embedded in the note itself. And there's all kinds of different denominations here. And I'm joined today by the founder of the Goldback Company, Jeremy Corden from Goldbacks. And welcome to the show, Jeremy. It's great to have you on today. Thanks for coming back.
I appreciate being here. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you. This is our second interview since, well, our third overall, but our second since we launched our partnership with Goldbacks. And I only did that, of course, after we did all the due diligence and all the testing. And I got to say, Jeremy, I'm so blown away. I'm so impressed with what you have done. This is completely innovative. I mean, no one in the world has done this like you've done it, to have physical gold embedded in these bills. And we've got all the lab results posted at verifiedgoldbacks.com for people who want to check that out for themselves. And that's also our affiliate site for Goldbacks. But Jeremy, walk us through this. Again, just briefly, how did you come up with these? How did you even manage to pull together the manufacturing technology to put precise divisions of gold into these goldbacks?
The manufacturing already existed, but they didn't manufacture anything like this. In fact, I got one in my wallet. This is from a long, long time ago. This is more the kind of things that our manufacturing company made. And it was really clunky. And, we helped them raise a whole bunch of capital and get their processes dialed in so we could do the gold back. They'd never gone down as small as 1,000th of an ounce before, and they'd never gone as big as 1/20th of an ounce.
Oh, really?
So we really had to make the range work so it could be a workable currency.
Well, this 50 that I'm holding, I mean, it is heavy. It is thick. And, I've done the test. I bought the kiln and melted it down. And when you first melt this at about 800 degrees Celsius, you get gold foil that comes out of this. In fact, guys, if you can show my screen, let me show you a picture of that gold foil. There it is in my hand. There's a 50 being melted, and there's the gold foil that comes out of it. And then if you melt that foil down, you get this sphere, this gold sphere. But Jeremy, I mean, how do you even manage to deposit this with precision with a printing machine? I mean, I don't even understand it.
No, for sure. So every goldback is made in a deep state space vacuum deposition chamber. So it's very high tech. This is the same level of technology that puts gold in your cell phone, in microchips in Taiwan. It's used for diabetic test strips. So in essence, you have a chamber. There's nothing in it. It's just space. It's just a vacuum. And you have a 50-pound slate of gold getting hit with a plasma ray, and it's depositing gold atom by atom on a polymer that's rolling through. And that can get measured pretty precisely, not as quite as precisely as we'd like. So we end up putting a little bit of extra gold in all the gold backs to make sure that we're never light.
Yeah.
That's the process.
Well, we saw that in our laboratory testing. And again, to my producers, if you show my screen, here it is. We tested the recoveries. I'm not going to focus on all the lab tests here today. We've got a lot more to talk about, but we measured anywhere from about 102% on the low side to 107% recovery of the claimed amount. But in no case did we see under 100%. So what you're saying rings true, Jeremy.
Great. No, and that was really satisfying to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially since we probably lost a little bit of gold in that process, of melting down and who knows what, but we had really good recoveries. In fact, again, one of them was 107%, although I'm not going to say that's typical. It's probably typically closer to maybe 102 or 103%, right?
Yeah, I'd say 107% is the outlier. If we're giving 107% of the gold that we say we are, we need to dial it back a little.
Yeah. Your gold inventory guy might have questions like, where did it go? Oh, we gave away too much on the bills. Well, let's talk about then the divisibility, because the thing, I'm getting a lot of positive feedback from people on these. I have given away like literally thousands of dollars of your gold backs, Jeremy, mostly in ones. And so here's a stack of ones right here, and people love these because they're, number one, they're really beautiful to look at. Just the design, the color, and the designs on both sides, on the back and the front, they're really amazing. But they're also precisely divisible. So whereas I can't take here's a silver coin. I can't take a silver coin here and cut off 1/1000th of it and use it to buy a sandwich or something. But I can take one gold back, which is 1/1000th of an ounce of gold, and I can give this to someone. I can use it as a gift or barter or trade, and I can know that divisibility is there, the utility is there, and it's accurate. So what kinds of use cases are you seeing among your customers taking advantage of that divisibility and practical use of it?
That's something that we thought a lot about before we even launched gold backs. And one of the very first things we did is we made a wallet that's designed to be used by men that works for gold backs, right? It's designed to fit kind of right into your front pocket, because we find that whatever the use case for gold backs are, it's really important to actually have them with you, because otherwise you're going to miss the opportunity to spend them most of the time. And opportunities to use gold backs as money happen, for a lot of folks, it's daily. It happens way more than you'd ever think. In fact, I put together a little list here, and you can get those wallets, right where you get gold backs. I'll tell you, there are people today that are living off gold backs, that are doing 60, 80% of all their transactions in 24 karat gold. And I think the reason why is because people are realizing that there's options. You don't have to just use kind of these central bank, Federal Reserve note products in commerce. And that's a really, really new dynamic. So we're already starting to see that. But just right off the list, gifts, that's a very low hanging fruit for gold backs.
Oh yeah.
If you give out, birthday cards, Christmas cards, Valentine's, any time that you can put something in a card. If you put cash in a card that's quickly forgotten, gold backs tend to elicit quite the response.
Absolutely.
Especially in proportion to the value you have there. Sorry,
and it's an opportunity for those of you who have children or grandchildren that you want to teach them something about gold. I mean, this is the way to do it. Even you give them one gold back, and they're like, "What is that?" And so you get to teach them like, this is physical gold. This has something in it that has held value through the rise and fall of civilizations for thousands of years, versus this fake fiat counterfeit greenback, whatever. Like, this is going to be gone in 10 years probably, and it's already lost 99% of its value since the Federal Reserve was founded. So but people take these gold backs, and I've seen people frame them. I've seen people put them in safe deposit boxes. But mostly they want to display them. They want to put them on like the wall or on a piece of furniture and show people these. They love to show these.
We found out that Yeah, there's a huge proportion of people that have seen gold backs, much higher than you would think. And part of the reason why is because people are eager to show each other. So as an educational tool, the gold back is extremely powerful because for, $4, you can turn anybody you know into someone that not only owns precious metals, but, got to hear about it and understand why. One conversation, I'll have with people, giving them a gold back is I'll say, hey, if you stick this gold back in your wallet or your purse and you were to bury that purse or wallet for 100 years and they pulled it out of the ground, what would be the only thing in your wallet that had value? Would it be your credit cards? Would it be your cash? Would it be,
your mobile phone?
your mobile phone? No, I mean, all of that's going to, rot and corrode away, or the value will be gone, or the bank will be long closed, or the dollar will be long dead. But if they pulled out a gold back in 100 years, that's the only thing in your entire wallet that has enduring value.
Exactly.
And that's what's so powerful about it. And that's a good segue. The next way to use gold backs, if you don't want to just do gifts, and gifts is great. We gave them out to our neighbors in our Christmas cards this year, is tips.
Yep.
We have a very strong tipping culture in the United States. And it feels like everybody is asking for a tip now. I mean, I was at a rock store, where they sell kind of like geodes and, onyx. And, they were asking for a tip at this, retail store on my purchase. And I've kind of turned that into an opportunity to, give people gold backs. And people are always excited to take them. It's always the coolest tip they've ever seen. I can explain it. I can tell them what it is. I can tell them why. And, oftentimes, you'll give a gold back to your waitress and you'll see her starting to, show the gold back to all the other waitresses, to the people in the back, and it might be the most memorable tip they get all year.
Yeah.
It's really a cool way to educate people.
Well, I did the same thing at a restaurant. I was giving out gold backs. This was during Christmas. I was giving out gold backs to all the waiters and waitresses there, and the chef. Just kind of a year-end thank you gift. So I was just handing out gold backs, and I practically shut down their restaurant because they stopped waiting tables to talk about gold backs. But the chef was so thrilled that then he came out and gave me like a giant container of his soup, that his homemade soup that's super delicious. And it was just a gift exchange. I gave them gold and he gave me soup, and I was like, this is awesome and totally spontaneous. I was just handing these out, but I guarantee you that's the most exciting tip they've ever received through the entire year.
Yeah, I gave out one at an ice cream shop one time. Similar response. They had a little tip jar in the front, and I'm explaining to the guy what this is and that it's real gold, and he couldn't believe it. He could not believe I was giving him, the real thing. And I said, hey, calm down. This is like $4. He says, oh no, this is really special. This is like maybe the nicest thing anyone's ever given me. And he took out his own wallet and paid for my ice cream.
What?
Wow. He felt like he had to even the score, it's like, that was so nice, and I didn't ask him to do that or expect that, but, he absolutely insisted. So it's, the emotional reaction that you get on giving a gold back is really, really high. And the value perception of a single gold back is super high. Yeah. And I think part of the reason, part of the magic behind the gold back is you look at it and everything that you can see that looks like gold is actually 24 karat gold.
That's amazing.
And well, there is 9 times the amount of surface area on a gold back as there is a 1 ounce gold coin. And part of the reason why I think we've always used gold is because there's an allure to gold. There's something really beautiful about gold that attracts people in. And that's part of why gold has been money. Sure, it's divisible, sure, it's rare, sure, it has all the qualities, but people really like it. They like to look at it. It attracts them. And per gold content, for the amount of gold content that there is in a single gold back, there's 1,000th the amount of gold as there is in a 1 ounce gold coin. There's 9 times the surface area. So what you have is 9,000 1,000 times the surface visibility for your gold in a gold back versus a 1 ounce coin. And all of that emotional impact, all of that power that gold has for money is amplified in a gold back to an extreme degree, which makes it a powerful form of money, even for people that don't understand anything about precious metals.
That's true. Yeah, and that's one of the amazing things about gold backs in particular is that you don't have to be an expert in gold to instantly see these are gorgeous and to see the emotional impact that it has on people. And because people automatically value them, you don't have to explain gold scarcity and the gold mining economy and how the dollar used to be tied to gold and then it was dropped by Richard Nixon in 1971 and then money printing. Like, you don't even have to go into all that. It's just like, wow, gold, that's beautiful. I want some. Like that. That's the equation for a lot of people, which brings me to my next point about merchants accepting gold backs. Oh, let me mention real quick though, the website is verifiedgoldbacks.com. That's our affiliate site. And if you go there, you can see all of my laboratory testing and some other videos and so on. You can see all the steps that we went through to verify the purity and the quantity of gold that's in the gold backs. And then if you click on like this button here, check gold back pricing now. And if you purchase gold backs, we do earn a small percentage at no additional cost to you. But this is how you can help support our platform and get gold backs at no additional cost. In fact, you really get them at a discount versus what the accepted value is among merchants. But that brings me to this point. So when I ordered gold backs, you included this sticker. It says, we accept gold backs. And I assume this is for merchants who want to put this in the window or whatever. So do you have a lot of merchants or like brick and mortar stores that are displaying this and are accepting gold backs?
Yes. And that's one of the first questions I was asked, when we started the project back in 2019. This is 5 years ago. You come out with something brand new and people say, well, that's cool. And that's neat, but who would take it? What do I do with it? Who would ever accept that? Right. And with any currency, with any, money system, you have to be able to prove that. So we went out in Utah and it took me maybe 3 or 4 days. We signed up. I was hoping that we'd get maybe 1 in 10 business owners that really appreciated and understood precious metals and sound money, that were really kind of awake to a lot of, the big macroeconomic problems, that we could get these people to take gold backs at their businesses. And what we found, it was actually closer to half of small business owners were willing to take payment in gold. And many of them had never owned gold before.
Oh, wow.
So they saw the gold back. They said, yeah, we would take that. We want to be part of the program. And, it really took off. Now I want to say that we have 8 businesses just in the state of Utah that take gold backs for every one that takes cryptocurrency as payment.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we're around between 700 and 800 businesses. I want to say that's what it is. And a lot of them are, it's like we have car dealerships. I paid for part of my truck with gold backs.
No kidding.
We've got contractors. You can build a house with gold backs. We've heard deals of people buying equity and land and groceries and, gas stations where they'll take payment in gold backs.
And since you mentioned crypto, I'm glad you brought that up because, I'm an advocate of certain types of privacy crypto, but there's a pretty big learning curve to use crypto. And the nice thing about gold backs is you don't have to install or download anything. You don't need passwords. You don't need a seed phrase. You don't need to remember anything. You don't even need a computer. Boom, the value's right there. You just give it to people. It's low tech, but it's like high resiliency, because the value's in the gold back itself. Do you ever get comments from people about gold backs versus crypto?
I have a really funny story to tell you. We were talking to this group and they're creating a show, and it's kind of a preparedness show, right? It takes place in the apocalypse, and I imagine it's grid down kind of environment, what that looks like. So really interesting premise, and they approached us wanting to have gold backs as part of their show, right? Of course, they want us to, pay for the promos or whatever, and that's fine. But one of the other groups that was really interested in paying them was like a crypto exchange group. And you think, okay, well, in grid down, if the power's out and the smartphones don't work,
yeah,
what are you going to do with your cryptocurrency? Like, what does that even look like?
You have to wait for the power to come back on.
Who's running the server?
Right.
What's the market? It doesn't. That one just kind of baffled me. Like, really, so you're gonna have a post-apocalyptic show, and you're gonna have a guy pull out his smartphone and ask the other guy to pull out their smartphone. They're gonna log into a server and they're gonna do a crypto exchange, and there's going to be a big market telling them how much their cryptocurrency is worth.
Yeah, like somehow after the data centers are all nuked, they think crypto is going to work. No, crypto is not for that scenario.
No, it's not. And it's not to say that there's not a scenario for crypto. I'm not anti-crypto. I'm not,
right.
I think it's great. A lot of the things that cryptocurrency has done, in the market and, kind of on the public stage has made it possible for gold backs to come out. I don't think we could have done this, even 10 years ago, because it would have just been, I think, too threatening to the system. Whereas, cryptos have already, kind of crossed that bridge,
right?
Where people are using things outside of dollars, and that's an accepted thing now.
Yeah, where crypto really shines is when the power grid is working and you want to buy something remotely.
Sure.
Or you want to transfer money to another country or something like that. That makes perfect sense.
Right.
But where gold backs,
there's use cases.
Yeah, right. But gold backs make so much sense for local, direct transfers of value or exchanges, barter, gift, as you said, but also, the idea of self-custody. So when you have gold backs in your hand, you have that self-custody, and that's even an idea that's very strong in crypto. They say, not your keys, not your crypto. It means don't leave your crypto on the exchange, have self-custody. But, with gold backs, you could either have it in your hands, or some people also choose to vault gold backs as well, don't they? Because maybe they want to take delivery of them later on, but they want to vault them right now because maybe they're not living where they're going to be living long term, or maybe they don't feel like they can protect them as well as a vault.
Sure.
Isn't that true?
Yeah. Well, a lot of people, they have gold backs for the same reason they have any form of gold. It's, even if they don't see themselves using it a whole heck of a lot, if they're not going to live off gold backs have really appreciated in value in terms of dollars. If you were to go to goldback.com and look, the gold backs started, I think we started selling them at like $2. And right now the average price is, well over $4. I think we hit, $4.40. I'd have to see what it is today because gold's going up. But the gold back does rise with the price of gold, and it rises with the price of gold at least as much as it does with gold coins and gold bars. So there's not a downside to owning gold backs versus coins and bars. Your partner, if you go through verified gold backs, they actually vault gold backs for free. So there's people that are paying thousands of dollars a year to vault their gold for custody. And, Alpine Gold, they do it for free through verified gold backs. And the reason why is, we've got, 5 different states for gold backs. We've got 5 different denominations. And, for us having the interchangeability of, being able to pull out whatever denomination we have in demand, it's worth it for paying everybody's vaulting fees on gold backs. So we see people vaulting, we have, 6 and 7 figure accounts vaulting gold backs. Wow.
And I'm glad you mentioned that gold backs rise with the price of gold. I mean, that should be intuitive to people because they contain physical gold. And so as gold rises in the price of dollars, then gold backs also rise in value. And it's, actually I want to ask you this question about where you think gold prices are going, because we just saw in the last month, as of this recording, we saw gold hit a record high, all-time high of, I think, 2130 or something in that range. And now it's adjusted back a little bit since then, but for the year of 2023, gold was up 13%. which, beats most stock market investments, or at least, Dow and Fortune 500 type of investments. And yet gold can continue to rise in terms of values of dollars. I'm not encouraging people to speculate on it, because I'm just saying that dollars are becoming worth less, which means that gold is holding value. But as gold holds value, gold backs themselves hold value because they contain gold. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes sense. And again, I mean, the price of gold back has about doubled just over the last 5 years in terms of dollars. And it's done at least as well, if not slightly better, than coins and bars in terms of appreciation. So there's not a downside to owning this form of gold in that sense in terms of value appreciation. Something else that I use gold backs for, I have little kids. I've got an 8-year-old son, a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old. And when I was a kid, when I was 6 years old, the bank came to my school and they said, hey, everybody needs to save money. Someday you're going to grow up and you're going to want money to, if you're going to get married, if you're going to go to school, if you're going to buy a house someday. So really, and I'm 6 years old, what you should be doing is you should be saving dollars and getting interest. And I think back then the bank paid, I don't know if it was 6 or 8% a year. And that made a lot of sense. Hey, compound interest is the greatest force on earth. And, now I look at my kids and I think, okay, maybe the dollar loses 6 to 8% a year
right.
if I'm being very optimistic. So what does that look like in 10 years? If my what's my 8-year-old supposed to do? Do I just teach him not to save? So he's actually been taking his savings, he's been putting it into gold backs, and he has a stockpile of gold backs. And since he started doing that when he was 5 years old, with, definitely some coaching from me. But the value has gone up for him, whereas the dollar's gone down. So, having gold backs is kind of like an allowance or like a savings for your kids. They do retain value, and it's not like I have to give them a full 1 ounce gold coin, to have them participate in what gold is doing.
Right.
So
right. No, it's a very powerful lesson too, because if you had a dollar savings account in the bank, even if you put it in a CD or something, maybe in a CD in a bank, if you get a great rate, you could get, 5% right now, perhaps. And a couple of years ago, it was like 2%. But last year, gold went up 13%. And you didn't have to sign any papers, and you didn't have to give custody of your money to a bank. See, that's the other thing. We need to talk about this. Gold backs don't depend on banks staying in business. A lot of people lost their deposits, lost their accounts. Silicon Valley Bank collapse. And what a lot of people don't know is that even though the FDIC bailed out American account holders there, the FDIC made a special decision to bail out over 250K. And that was a decision that Yellen promised they would not do for other banks, but she won't tell you which banks. So it's kind of like Russian roulette with your banks. But the other thing is that foreign account holders lost everything. Foreign account holders in that bank were not insured by the FDIC, and they got left with zero. So, you hold gold backs, it doesn't depend on a bank remaining viable. And banks can have bail-ins, which means they take your money and they call it theirs. And that's happened before. It'll probably happen again. With gold backs, since the gold is in your hands, there's nothing you can do, Jeremy, as a company. You can't just, claim everybody's gold backs as your own. That would be like a gold back bail-in. That's physically impossible. Can't happen.
Yeah, someone asked me, they said, well, what if something happens to gold back? What if something happens to you? What if, they drag you out and, you get disappeared and, gold back gets shuttered down? Well, the value of your gold back will probably go up.
Yeah, probably.
Because we can't make them anymore.
Exactly. So again, self-custody is the key issue here on all of this. Okay. I do want to ask you one question now. Tell us about the premium of gold backs and why, a thousandth of an ounce of a gold back here is worth over $4 right now, even though a thousandth of an ounce of gold, if it's just raw gold, like shavings, I guess, or a gold nugget, a thousandth of an ounce would be worth, roughly $2. So tell us about that price difference and the utility premium.
Sure. If you buy a tree, if you buy a log, right, you cut down a pine tree, that log might be worth $30 at a lumber mill. So a $30 log. How many pencils can you make out of a log?
Oh, many thousands of pencils, I would imagine.
Many thousands of pencils. But maybe the price of the log is the same as the price of 100 pencils. Why would anyone ever buy a pencil?
Yeah, right.
That's a horrible deal on wood. It's a very expensive way to buy wood.
Exactly. But it's got utility value.
Right.
You can use it.
I would rather own 100 pencils than a log, right? Because I'm more likely to write things, and to do things with that. So really it comes down to what your goal is. If you want to have a pile of gold scrap and your goal is to craft it into jewelry, the gold back probably isn't your best choice. If you ever envision it using your gold as money or spending it, any scenario where you're not using dollars and you need your gold, there's not a more useful form of gold to own. And it took me a while to really get there. The gold back has never been counterfeited. There's never been a fake gold back. And with all the new anti-counterfeiting features we're rolling out, we don't even think there will ever be a fake gold back. And that's not true for any other form of gold. If you wanted to buy 1,000th of an ounce of gold, even up until, recently, this is what 1,000th of an ounce of gold looks like in the form of a coin. You see that? It's like it's like a fraction of my finger.
A little speck. Yeah.
A little speck, it's like this isn't what anybody is actually going to use as money. And there's no way to authenticate that. But if you wanted to buy that little speck of gold, it's $20. So the fact that we can take an ounce of gold and split it into 1,000 serialized, never been counterfeited pieces and do that for as cheap as we can, nobody has ever done that. I think if Goldbacks had a 200 or 300% premium, they'd still be a bargain. For what they are, the Goldback is extremely, extremely cheap. It's a very affordable way to own gold.
Yeah, and for all the Goldbacks that I have used as gifts or tips, I've never had anybody ask me like, whoa, that's too expensive or anything. They just ask me, how much is it worth?
Right.
And
what's the value?
Right. Yeah. What's the value of it? And I explain where that value comes from and how it's tied, ultimately anchored to gold itself, plus the utility value of this. And again, I own gold coins, and gold coins are great for like one day. Like, let me just lay out this scenario. I think the US dollar is going to collapse. I think the state of Texas will probably launch its own Texas currency, and they'll say, we want gold. And if you bring gold to the Texas depository, we will issue you Texas currency. And I will do that. I'll bring some amount of gold. Here's the gold. I'm exchanging it for the new Texas currency so I can conduct business in Texas. I think that's a great use for bulk gold. And I intend to do that one day. But I can't take those same gold coins and go out to the market and buy seeds and a pound of beef and a gallon of diesel with it, because I can't make change.
That is absolutely fascinating. So I want to go back to what you said. So you think that someday Texas might make its own currency. What do you think the currency of Texas would be?
They would just issue a Texas currency, and they would say it's backed by some percentage of gold. Is okay. What I imagine they would do.
So you would turn in gold coins for a Texas currency that's backed by gold.
Correct. Right.
Okay.
Right. Because I want to do business in Texas.
Of course.
Yeah.
And that's really how, the money systems had to work for so long throughout the world. Is you'd get something like this, right? There's a $100 bill, and they'd say, okay, we're not going to give you all these tiny little gold coins. We're going to give you one of these, and you're going to have to trust that our vault has gold in it.
Exactly.
You can't use the gold, but you can have a note attached to the gold. And the gold standard really failed in a big way, because at the end of the day, the custodians of the gold, it's speculated, they didn't really have all the gold to back up all the money they were printing.
Absolutely. And they refused to audit the vaults. Yeah.
It was the only way to do a gold standard. And what we're rolling out, we're going to go to Texas at some point, and we're going to say, look, forget the whole vault thing. Texas Goldback, everyone can just have the gold in their hands.
Well, I would greatly prefer that. I would absolutely, if the state of Texas should just adopt Texas Goldbacks as the new currency. I would greatly prefer that. And then I would trade in my gold for Texas Goldbacks.
Yeah, you'd be just trading one form of gold that's difficult to use and is difficult to authenticate for a more useful form of gold.
Exactly.
And we're already starting to see people do this. It took a few years. It took me a few years. Because when I started Goldback, I said, hey, you know, coins are kind of this long-term savings play, and I'm going to turn those in for some future thing, and I'm going to be using Goldbacks. But when it finally clicked for me that the future thing I'd be turning the coins in for, it wasn't going to be central bank digital currencies. I'm not going to trade for those. I don't want to trade for cash if cash is a falling knife, right, in the future.
Well, not the US dollar, that's for sure.
No. So the only thing that would make sense to trade my gold coins and bars in for is this. So, because this is useful to use as money, right? So if that's the case, I just started selling all my gold coins off, and I just started buying Goldbacks. And I think it's possible that given the production constraints in Goldbacks, that compared to gold coins, Goldbacks are undervalued. You know, so the people that are doing it now, and we've seen it again a little bit with the data over the last 5 years, it used to be, well, let me back up here. During a period where gold coins and gold bars went up 70% against the dollar, the Goldback did somewhere around 90%. So we're seeing the Goldback actually outperform coins and bars.
That's really interesting. And
it's not what I expected. It's the opposite of what I expected. And again, we just didn't have the data. You know, now go ahead.
Okay, what I want to point out though, like this is a Wyoming Goldback of 25. So this has 25,000 of an ounce of gold in it. This is 100% of the gold is in the Goldback, right? 100% of the 25 1,000ths of an ounce. Whereas the scenario I was talking about where Texas would have a gold-backed state currency, in the mind of every economist out there, typically, they wouldn't say that you would need a 100% backing of gold. They would say that you only need about 20% of the gold versus the currency that you issue as the state, because you're only going to get some percentage of people ever requesting gold, you know, turning in the currency for the gold. So even a gold-backed state currency would not be backed by 100% of gold, which makes it, you know, fractional gold backing currency, which has its own inherent risks, right? So I'm just pointing out that Goldbacks contain all the gold that they claim to contain, and it's not fractional.
Wouldn't it be interesting if the way the new system worked, and I'm just speculating here, I'm not saying this is the plan, is if that's what the model they wanted to go to and they wanted to do fractional reserve lending and they said, hey, this is the only way it works for loans and mortgages, and if we want to live in a 21st century economy, you can't have it be one-to-one for everything. But all the cash that everybody used was one-to-one. They actually had all their gold, and every time you deposited it, it was fractional reserve for loans.
Interesting.
Which is, I think, how people think the system works.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, because at some point, you know, a lot of transactions have to be electronic. So then that digital money should be backed by gold as well. And, you know, Texas has its own depository, just to use Texas as an example again. And Texas has the ability to launch its own currency. I mean, Texas is one of the largest economies in the world by itself. So when are you coming out with Texas Goldbacks? That's the question I really want to ask you.
For you to ask. You know, I'll tell you this: the Texas repository does hold Goldbacks.
Yes.
You know, they started holding those, I believe, back in August, and I think they put some sort of notice about that. We do have designs for a Texas Goldback. We've actually already done the artwork for the Texas Goldback series. What we need to do before we can do Texas is we have to go out and we have to build up the network of businesses that accept Goldbacks there. And we're finding across the country, maybe a third of business owners are willing to take Goldbacks, but we still have to get people to talk to them about it, to advertise their business. If you were to go to goldback.com, you can see the different states that have Goldbacks have advertised business networks associated with the gold back. It's like a series of local currencies, right? But we're seeing a huge amount of gold back transactions outside of those 5 states. In the last year, we have a calculator on goldback.com. We've seen about 70,000 people use that calculator for a gold back transaction just in the last year alone.
Wow. And I guess you can see that those, like the visitors to that page, are outside of the 5 states that you mentioned.
Right. So we're seeing people use the gold back calculator all over the world.
Yeah.
And again, people are trading with the gold back because it has inherent value. It's gold, right? So it's a good trading tool, in virtually any economy.
Well,
so it's kind of, go ahead.
Well, plus I think that given where the dollar is going, what's happening with the BRICS nations and global de-dollarization, personally, I think there's going to be a surge of interest in gold backs, because people are going to flock to money that holds value. It's really that simple. And yes, some people might use, digital crypto. Some people might use junk silver coins. Some people might use gold coins, and then, to make big purchases with people like, oh, I want to buy your farm for $1 million, and, here's 500 gold coins or whatever. I can see that happening, but in terms of day-to-day transactions, gold backs just can't be beat. Because, the thing about junk silver too, I mean, I own junk silver. I've advocated junk silver, but there's a lot of calculations that people have to go through for that. Have you noticed that? It's like
junk silver is tricky. I used to be a huge proponent of junk silver. When I kind of started my precious metals journey, I'd spend it at the farmer's market and, kind of different places. And there's a few issues. I mean, first, you have really different qualities on junk silver.
That's
some
right.
of them are super worn out and some of them aren't. A lot of the designs are designs that aren't unique to silver. So the mercury or the dimes, the Roosevelt dimes, they look just the same as the dimes we have today. So you have to convince somebody that your dime is different and that it's special and that it's made out of silver because of the year. And we're just not seeing the same acceptance rates for junk silver. We did a big test at farmers markets. We found that 1 in 5 merchants at farmers markets will take junk silver as payment, and that 4 out of 5 will take gold backs as payment in the farmers markets that we tested. Huh. So again, it's that allure to the gold, right? People see it, they're attracted to it. It's very simple. And, the other problem with junk silver, and I hate to bash on junk silver, but, we're getting fake junk silver now. If you go on Alibaba, you can buy fake mercury dimes, and the average person, the average merchant, isn't going to be able to authenticate whether your junk silver is even real. So it makes it all the more risky to use and accept.
Well, I mean, I own junk silver, and I love silver. It's actually, I guess it's my second most favorite element on the table of elements. But you make some valid points there. Gold backs are unique and they're easy to recognize. And we're almost out of time here, Jeremy. So let me remind people that in terms, you're just mentioning that junk silver can be counterfeited, but gold backs have not been counterfeited. Mm. And what my company is doing as a partner with your company, Jeremy, is I am secretly purchasing gold backs from you under a different, family member's name. And then every quarter I'll be testing those using the same techniques just to confirm the gold purity and the gold content, and updating my landing page, verifiedgoldbacks.com. So this is just for people watching. This is one more way that you have third-party assurance that the amount of gold that's claimed to be in gold backs is actually there, and it's actually 24 karat plus in terms of its purity. So we got to wrap this up, Jeremy, just about out of time, but I wanted to add that in. Any final thoughts for our interview today?
We're just starting the new year. A couple things. I'd have to check exactly where it is today, but we're very close to having sold $100 million worth of gold backs in just the first few years. Wow. It's really, really taking off. I believe that there were more individual gold backs sold last year than there were gold eagles. So which is a little easier to do, and you don't have to sell an entire ounce at a time, right?
Sure, yeah.
but it's really growing. We believe that there's over 1 million people that own gold backs today. We're seeing a huge amount of recognition for gold backs in all states, and that's going up. Going into this new year, we really want to get more serious about educating and onboarding more coin stores to get involved in selling and distributing gold backs. Goldback is a wholesaler. So, I might sell to, your partners, but we've got, hundreds of coin stores that sell gold backs. We've got dozens of online distributors that sell gold backs. And, in terms of just educating the market and really letting people understand, why goldback is such a huge innovation in a space that doesn't get a huge amount of innovation is what we're looking at for 2024. It's almost like we had to be more quiet about it up until now, just because we had huge constraints in terms of how many gold backs we can produce. And now those constraints are really being lifted in a way where we can, more aggressively educate people on what's going on with this.
Well, that's great news. I know you made a lot of investments in, the printing tech and scaling up, and I think the timing is actually perfect in terms of history because of what's happening with the dollar. But I want to thank you, Jeremy, for taking the time with us today. We obviously need to continue this conversation and talk about more use cases. So if you could come back, in another month or so, we'd really love to have you back.
Absolutely. There's one more thing. If you happen to be a business owner in Texas, you can actually sign up on goldback.com with your business. If we get enough businesses to sign up in Texas, it can speed up how fast we can make a Texas goldback.
Oh, that's great. Okay, well, I'll spread the word as well, because I know, almost everybody that I visit in Texas would love to take goldbacks.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So if we can start building that network, you can do it online. It just takes about a minute. We're not going to publish the map of goldback accepting businesses in Texas until we have a Texas goldback.
Okay.
But I suspect that that's more likely to happen within the next few years than the next 10 years. It's going to be sooner than you think.
Okay. And real quick, does your Texas goldback, because I noticed you have some of your designs of your other states, you have various animals like a buffalo and horses and so on. Does the Texas goldback design include the longhorn cattle?
I'd have to check.
Okay.
I think so.
I'm going to vote for longhorns.
We haven't made it yet.
Well, that's my vote. Texas longhorn cattle. It should be our state animal, I suppose. But anyway, okay. Jeremy.
Yeah, I'll check.
I'll take a look. That'd be great. I'd love to find out about that. And I can't wait for Texas goldbacks to come out. But in the meantime, it's Wyoming, Nevada. What are the other, Utah? What are the other states?
Utah, New Hampshire, South Dakota. And again, people are buying goldbacks in all the states.
Sure, yeah.
Don't feel like you can't, participate if you're not in one of those states.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, thank you, Jeremy. And thank you for joining us today. It's great to talk with you.
Okay. Thanks for having me.
All right. That was Jeremy Corden there from Goldback. And remember, the website where you can purchase these is verifiedgoldbacks.com. And that does pay us a small affiliate percentage at no additional cost to you. So you can acquire goldbacks for yourself and also help support this platform at the same time. Thank you for watching today. I'm Mike Adams here of Brighteon.com and naturalnews.com. Take care. All right, back in stock at the Health Ranger store, we now have our certified organic lab tested milk powder and also our coconut milk products. Again, both back in stock. I've got some on my desk. Can you show that? There we go. We've got milk powder in number 10 cans, which are really great for long-term storage. Also completely rodent proof there. We also have milk, that is cow's milk, in the pouches. And then we have coconut milk powder as well for those of you who want that option. I use both of these. These are great long-term storable items, great barter items. They're both available at healthrangerstore.com, along with hundreds of other products that we have there. Check this out. We also have our new organic super anthocyanins powder, which is great. I mean, this is a blend of 6 organic berry and vegetable powders. It's high in anthocyanins, which are the purple pigment molecules that have extraordinary properties for supporting your health. Also, of course, lab tested for glyphosate and heavy metals and more. And then if you go through the website, you'll see all these other products that we have. Freeze-dried beet juice powder, organic nascent atomic iodine that's in organic glycerin, by the way. It makes it more tasty for people. Here's our organic vanilla bean powder, like the real vanilla bean powder, not make-believe fantasy artificial vanilla flavors. And then we have this new Hydrate Elementals, which is organic coconut water with Aquaman, which is a very popular mineral supplement. And this has great benefits. You can read about that and much more, collagen, peptides, and so on. All of this at healthrangerstore.com, where we do more in-house lab testing of our own products than any company in the world, any retailer, any e-commerce company on the planet. We do more rigorous testing with our in-house lab. And that way we can bring you clean foods and supplements, things that we know to be clean, and almost everything certified organic as well. So check it all out, and thank you for your support at healthrangerstore.com. Take care. A global reset is coming, and that's why I've recorded a new 9-hour audiobook. It's called The Global Reset Survival Guide. You can download it for free by subscribing to the naturalnews.com email newsletter, which is also free. I'll describe how the monetary system fails. I also cover emergency medicine and first aid and what to buy to help you avoid infections. So download this guide. It's free. It's my gift to you simply because I want like-minded people to survive.